Okay, should be all good now. A little bit of technical difficulties, but now we had one more person join us. So you guys have all been
Yeah, I can see
selected.
the screen now, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Because I was trying to record first, but okay. So you guys have all been selected as project leads, and obviously with that comes a lot of responsibility. So we're just holding this short meeting. Should only take about 20 more minutes just to go through all these guidelines, answer any questions you guys have. So I mean, starting out, we will share this document with you guys after we edit it a little bit. Like obviously with everything, we just put out down our points, put in ChatGPT, and yeah. But anyways, we're gonna start with just the communication standards. So you guys are gonna be responsible for setting up 2 weekly meetings at least, one with David and I, and one with your sub team per week. It's gonna be your responsibility to communicate these in the respective channel, and then obviously communicating with David when when a good time is for these meetings, right? Also, you're going to be responsible for presenting at design reviews. So that's going to be dependent on each design review specifications. Like for this one coming up right now, we want to go over the BOM, see what you guys are doing with what you're actually requesting, right? Ideally, we would like to see schematics, but obviously it's a very busy time of year, especially with midterms and all that. So that's completely fine if that can't happen, but try your best to have at least an idea of what's happening, maybe flowcharts. I'd say that's probably the bare minimum for each project, having a flowchart, having a general logic flow, and having systems decided. You're also responsible for interdisciplinary communication. So, for example, the Gripper Arm team, we technically have 2 leads designated for that because we decided to split that project up. But you two are both going to be responsible for communicating with the mechanical team lead, for the mechanical team Gripper Arm lead. Because, well, obviously we need that. You guys are going to be the main points of communication. So it's expected that you know most of what's going on with the mechanical side and everything that's going on with the electrical side. That way, there's no holes and everything flows smoothly. We don't have mix-ups happening or confusions happening later on. And then, obviously, this last point, open channels. You got to maintain clear communication. That's expected with your team. That's just being a good leader, right? You are the project lead. You are the manager of these projects. So when someone's having difficulties, always respond. If someone's asking you questions, try not to blow them off. Next, we're going to move into the leadership responsibilities. And the number one thing, this is at the top for a reason, deadline discipline. Didn't have a good name for this, but essentially, you have to ensure that deadlines or submissions are handed in before deadlines. Our electrical deadlines, David and I will communicate these with you guys very well, but someone left.
Andre, it's fine.
David and I will communicate these deadlines with you very well, but it's your responsibility to ensure that deadline reaches your team. And in most cases, I would recommend setting your own deadline ahead of the electrical deadline, because there is always going to be people who aren't as who don't have as much initiative, who aren't as tapped in as you are, and you have to account for that. So that's just one of the things that advice for leadership that we give you. Obviously, if you're having issues with someone not hitting deadlines consistently, you talk to David or I, and then we work something out. Maybe we restructure the team. Excuse me. And then that moves into our next thing, task delegation. So as the project progresses, it's going to be your responsibility solely to delegate tasks. How are you breaking it down, right? I'm going to keep using the Gripper Arm team as an example just because I'm pretty familiar with it. But for example, Rhea is going to be the propulsion lead for the Gripper Arm team, right? So she's going to be working with one other person, and then Sach is, I believe, a floater in that team. He's going to be working with the power and control, which is the other side, and the propulsion. So she's going to be responsible for delegating those tasks, letting those members know, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this by this deadline, right? And your deadline should follow a decent flow, and we will have a general progression rate as a team, as an electrical team, where we want to be. We want to be PCBs at this phase, testing at this phase, making changes to design at this phase. We're going to be following that, but if you can get ahead of that, always try to, because the more time, at the end of the day, especially with our busy schedules, time is going to be our biggest limiting factor. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And then with your task delegation, that falls back into the deadline discipline. When someone's not consistently meeting deadlines, you should have those safety precautions in place. Okay, if this person that's clearly not giving me this PCB soldered and done for 2 weeks, and I've been asking for it for 3, and there's 1 week left, and they have a track record of not being on time, do it yourself. Ask someone else to do it with you. Talk to David or I. We will get you someone who will get you help. When things are left to the last minute, you can't have that. And as a lead, you cannot leave anything until the last minute. Obviously, ties back into the interdisciplinary communication, sub-team coordination. So, grip arm, for example, again, if you're using components that are vital to both teams, that has to be coordinated. All members of both sub-teams that are involved with that should know. And then utilizing schedules like when to meet, utilizing schedule tools like when to meet is very important because, for example, the Pinger team, they have not had great communication thus far. And a main point of that communication is everyone could, until the last minute, no one could knew when to meet at the right time. Obviously, those things can be mitigated if you think ahead of time as a leader, and then you use these tools, which make your life easier and also make it easier to communicate with your teammates. Proactive issue resolution, right? That's just identify and address issues promptly. Don't try to ignore stuff for too long. Don't let stuff build up. There's 2 types of things. There's like a design issue. There's also, more specifically, which is probably going to be more important, team issues. If 2 members are not getting along, you have to discuss that immediately. You can't let that build up. You can't build a toxic work environment, especially for a club that's supposed to be fun, that's supposed to be for a good experience. You can't let that happen, and as a lead, that's your responsibility as well to issue that. And if those issues keep escalating and it's just out of your control, it's not a problem. Talk to David or I, and we will handle it. We will try our best to help you out and take care of it. Team dynamics, basically, try not to choose favorites. Obviously, we understand that you might have friends on your team, or on your team you might have people that work way harder than others, right? And in that case, yeah, you could argue that it's earned. However, we have to give everyone an equal chance no matter what. And through that means even if someone, you still give them chances, right? It might suck and it might be very tedious, but that's part of being a leader, is understanding that things have to change eventually. And if they don't change, then you change them. But things will change eventually. Something will change. Maybe it's in them, maybe it's in their work ethic, maybe it's in their habits. But essentially, yeah, try not to choose favorites. Try not to, delegate tasks like, oh, well, he asked for it and he's my friend, so I'm going to give it to him. Try not to do that. Try to, if 2 people are arguing over a task, find a way to split it up. Maybe find a way for them to present their arguments. And at the end of the day, we want to try to have unanimous decisions going through sub teams, but obviously that's not possible. At least have an understanding. Okay, if a person doesn't agree, at least they understand, right? Maybe it's not what they want, but they still understand. Okay, that's still how it works. Yeah, they understand your perspective, their perspective, the other person's perspective, and so on. Work review. This is specifically going to tie to documentation. Now, as a project sub team, you guys are all responsible for documentation, right? So for our final report that we write on our AUV, which it counts for points at the competition, all our sub-teams are responsible for the design philosophies, the processes, inspirations, even troubles they had. That's always a good thing to throw in. But as a project lead, it's your responsibility to make sure information being put in is accurate, correct, and legible, right? You're making sure that good work is being put forward. We can't have all the team leads going through the entire report over and over again when we need to change something. We're relying on you guys to do that. The smaller we can break up these tasks, the less work each of us have to do, right? And then team awareness, this also just falls into good communication, right? So always know what's going on, always know where your members are at and where they need help with. Equal opportunities, that also falls back into the team dynamics. Be collaborative, don't choose favorites. Open-mindedness, always, as a lead, it's going to generally, as a lead, your vision is the one being executed, but you have to respect the fact that other people also may have a vision for the project as well, and sometimes those ideas are better. We didn't choose you guys as lead because you had better technical knowledge or you were an outstanding leader or you said the most. We understood that you guys, part of being a good leader is the ability to learn, the ability to take criticism and just to build on it, as fast as possible, right? So that's what we are expecting. They're not expecting everything to be a right answer. We're expecting you to understand the correction. And then innovation encouragement, that's kind of self-explanatory. Obviously, we want you guys being creative. We don't want you guys stealing designs just straight off the internet. And then moving on, this is a very important one. Obviously, this is very overlooked in many scenarios, but professional etiquette, mainly punctuality. You should be on time for all meetings. I mean, as a lead, I'd even say try to aim to be there early. Aim to be there in the first one of the room. If you have an in-person meeting booked, the lead should be the first one to claim that room. Obviously, unless someone's already in that room, but you should be the one to claim that study room. Take lead in the meeting, obviously, but don't be late. Don't have your members waiting on you, because that's gonna lead them to like what, they don't believe in you. Oh, our lead is not. That's not. You're not. You have to lead by example, and that's part of leading by example. Professionalism. That's pretty self-explanatory when you're communicating with your team. Obviously, if it's like with your friends, like we understand, but if you're communicating in a general channel, try to keep it as professional as you can. Obviously, there still is a student club, so we're not setting expectations of a dress code or what vocabulary you can use, but just keep that in mind. There's also exhibits for you guys generally get the idea. Lead by example. That falls back into punctuality. If you're behind on deadlines, how can you expect your team to be ahead of them, right? So everything that we're saying, every deadline, every rule that's set for members, leads have to meet 120%. You have to be ahead of the curve. You have to be proactive. And that's very important, especially when things change, because things do rapidly change. If you are falling behind immensely, then you're not going to know where you're at. And your team, that's when David and I will have to step in and then maybe take over as the lead, assign a new lead. Yeah. Respect, inclusion, constructive communication, and conflict resolution. These are all things we've already addressed. If you have more questions about that, talk to David or I. If you're having issues with that, talk to David or I. Basically, whenever something's not going right and it's out of your control, talk to David or I. We're here to help, and that's like our main job. Team management. So this is moving more into specifics. Goal setting. Always establish clear and achievable goals for your team. So when you're setting a deadline, when I'm saying set a deadline ahead of the electrical team deadline, don't set it for 3 weeks ahead if it's a 4-week deadline. That makes no sense. Don't expect you to do 1 week of work in 4 weeks. That's ridiculous. And at the same time, don't be too lax on it. You have to find that right balance. That's going to be different for everyone, because that's going to be on you to gauge general technical strengths of your team and then set it from there. If someone is technically not as sound, they're still learning as they go, nothing wrong with that, completely fine. Give them a more lax deadline and try to be more hands-on with your support, because in most cases, even if they're an extremely slow learner, we won't be able to afford to have those deadlines, and that's where, as lead, yes, you will be taking on more responsibility, more work. Performance monitoring, that kind of ties into that again. You have to gauge the strengths of your team. You should know the strengths of your team. If someone's very good at coding, you should know that. If someone's not as strong as coding, you should know that. For the most part, most people are pretty self-aware of their strengths and weaknesses, especially in our club. It's actually been outstanding how accountable people are to that. But just make sure that you're monitoring it as well, that you're forming your own opinions. This is more so going to be on performance monitoring for punctuality, things like that. That just ties back into being a leader, understanding if someone's not hitting deadlines, all that stuff. You talk to them, you speak with things that they can do better. Resource management, this is just going to be, this is all standard stuff. This is what you should be doing as a member, effectively even. But as a lead, you're responsible to make sure everyone else is doing it, right? So if someone is extremely over budgeting something to the point where it's probably detrimental to your project, if not the sub-team, you have to be on top of that. You have to, for example, the bill of materials, each project lead should be reviewing that, making sure, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, this is probably the best component for this as far as price goes, as far as performance goes, as far as what we need goes, right? If, for example, I'm making a BMS, if I put a $300 current sensor in there, that makes no sense. We don't need a $300 current sensor. Yeah, it might be the easiest to slot in, but all that, but $300 makes no sense. Role clarity, this ties back into task delegation. It is often going to be important to let members know, hey, maybe don't, like if you have someone who's not strong at coding, it's just an example, but they insist on helping, sure, let them help. But if they're taking away from the productivity and the progress of the other members, you have to be the one to step up to let them know, right? So this is where being a good leader is important. You have to be able to provide constructive criticism in a non-offensive way without hurting egos. It's very difficult. We know, David and I know from firsthand experience, it's one of the most difficult things about being a lead. But that's just something that you develop along the way. And hopefully your sub-team members can understand that you guys are all still learning. Most of you guys first year in the club even. So yeah, professional development, that just goes along saying if you have strong suits and someone needs to develop that, I'll go back to coding, for example, help them get resources, Go like, hey, this is how I figured out how to do this. So like I use W3 Schools to learn. So why don't you can give that a try. I use this YouTube, right? And then risk management, that's obviously that ties back into basically everything we've gone over. You should understand some degree of risk for everything. Like if it's a dodgy design that might not work, right? And if this gets out of hand with anything, talk to David or I. We will help you, right? Or even both of us arrange a call. And when I want to go back to what I'm saying, talk to David or I about basically everything. These should be things that we're discussing in our weekly meetings. Our weekly meetings won't be too long, maybe 15 to 20 minutes max, unless it's like really a mess. But these are all things that you will be going over how you're doing them. So you're going to be referring back to this document a lot. Try to keep it in the back of your mind, like, okay, yeah, this, that. You don't really need to keep notes. It's not that serious where we're expecting full reports in each meeting, but you should have a good idea of basically everything over this, what you're doing, what you could be doing better. Technical responsibilities, I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not really going to go over it. Collaboration, and we already went over that. Personal development, that's basically the same thing. But the main thing I want to highlight here is mentorship and self-reflection. Last year, I don't think we had any first years on the electrical sub team. This year, I believe we have 2 or 3, maybe 4. So that mentorship, especially as a lead, a lot of you will be working with first year students who haven't taken the courses you have, who haven't even declared their major yet. They don't even, obviously they want to do electrical, but they don't even know if they're doing that yet. So providing that mentorship to junior members is extremely important. That obviously ties along to giving them resources, helping them with design philosophies, helping them think the way you think could be very beneficial for them, especially when it comes to technicalities. And then the main thing I want to emphasize in this is self-reflection. How can you be better? If no leader has ever looked at himself like, wow, I'm the perfect leader, I'm doing everything right. You have to be able to look back on a meeting and be like, okay, I could have done this better, I could have prepared for this better, maybe I could have had a more clear agenda, maybe I could have had an agenda in the first place, maybe you don't have an agenda. Those are all extremely important things that you have to be able to do. And honestly, David and I, when we have these weekly meetings with you, we will be expecting some degree of self-reflection, things to work on. We're always going to try to set the same way you're setting goals for your team. David and I will be setting goals for you, right? But that's only possible if you communicate with us effectively. If we're managing 16 teams just between the two of us, that's extremely difficult to give you guys specific goals based off your specific things. That's on you to communicate that. For you guys, it's easier. You're managing 5 members max, or 5 members between 2 of you, or 3 members between 1 of you. That's extremely manageable when it comes to that reflection point where you understand, okay, this is where I'm not doing well, this is where I'm doing well. How am I going to fix this? I can't fix this. Joven, David, I need help. Training participation, feedback seeking, these are all, you guys obviously will have access to this document, but if we hold a workshop, or if we hold, for example, I think James is holding an Altium workshop eventually, when it comes time to design PCBs and run simulations for power and stuff, you're expected to communicate that. If you're not familiar with it, you're expected to be at that, because when your sub team needs help, they're not going to go to James first, they're going to go to you first. And so that is extremely important. And then additional expectations, documentation, we've already gone over that. Sustainability focus, that ties back into risk management, and then just checking over bill of materials, making sure no one's doing something that doesn't make sense. We're all engineers, we're all problem solvers, and we all think logically. So that should be something that's pretty easy to understand. Positive representation, try to always remain neutral. or positive emotionally. Don't try to always express, like, obviously it's not good to bottle up emotion, but I'm saying if it's in a meeting, someone's frustrating you, don't express that. Always try to keep your temper cool. um that's part of being a leader, because you can't that's leading by example as well. You can't be getting into arguments no matter how much someone's like pissing you off or doing anything. You can't be getting into arguments. You can't be breaking down as that, because once you start to break down, the team starts to fall apart. Ethical standards, community engagement. That's just, yeah, community engagement specifically. We do host outreach events, and we would hope to see most of you guys there as project leads. We would hope to see most of you guys at those events, because they're very important. I mean, not even just for our club, but when we're doing this, we can't just do it for ourselves. We want to foster the future. We want to help kids gain interest in this the same way we did. So part of being a leader is providing that ties along with mentorship and all that. We'll have more details about like the outreach events that we do and all that stuff later, when it actually happens, probably in April, March, maybe one in February. I believe that's what was planned. But yeah, just know you will be expected of that. And then hopefully, I mean, ideally, we have our entire club there if we have a massive one. But judging by what we'll have, hopefully we have at least all the project leads there. And then that's basically it for this document. We will edit this, share this with you, so you will always have something to refer back to. And then, yeah, any questions?
Just before we do questions, let me just quickly add on to the last point Joven put up, about addressing issues. In terms of when there is a fight in a meeting, or if anything's going on in a meeting, we don't say ignore the issue. You do need to address it, but address that one-on-one with the person that is upsetting you or where something is happening. Don't do that in front of the entire team. Other than that, if all of this seems really, really daunting, yes, it is, but also this is a huge opportunity to actually grow and learn and become a better leader. And I think, just for me, the key takeaways here, that I think you guys should focus on is be structured, communicate well, provide clear deliverables. And then just another message for me is, we are a team that is trying to go to competition, but that's not our primary goal. Our primary goal is to build engineers and to build skills, to build the students of the future, right? That's pretty much it from my side.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Right, but like, think about why you guys joined this club. This being a project lead is a great opportunity. I mean, most reasons people join clubs in general is gain experience to put on their resume, get a co-op, get a job. Right, these are the experiences that you know. But it's not about just having the experience, it's about learning from it and growing from it. If you can write something down, but if you don't have the experience to back that up, you're not going to get very far.
Awesome. And again, we're here to help you guys. We're here if you have any issues, anything come up, any questions, anything, just come to me or Joven and we will sort things out. Do you guys have any questions? Awesome. I think you covered a lot there, Joven. In that case, we will share this document with you by the end of the day, and I will put into the group chat some more details on what exactly is expected from the design review. And that's pretty much it.